talk to Isabel Oakeshott, Talk's international editor, because she joins me now. Isabel, very good morning to you.
Good morning. Well, I can see what the Tories are trying to do now, and I've heard this quite a bit from senior, like Conservative grandees, as it were. And, privately they admit that the country just isn't listening to them. Nobody really cares at this point what the Tories have to say about anything. And, that's fairly normal after after a party has been spectacularly ousted from power. And privately, what they think is that the only thing people are going to listen to them on in the medium term is the economy. And you heard a bit of that from Mel Stride just now, saying, well, Labour's obviously screwing everything up and reform only produces fantasy economics. Well, good luck to them on that, I say. I'm a bit tired of this lazy argument about reform's economics just being made up. They don't seem to have much else to cling to, really, do they, the Tories at this point?
No, they don't. And I mean, also, to talk about economic literacy as the former Tory government is rather laughable to me. I mean, I don't think any economic literacy has been involved in either political party that's run this country for most of this century, because all they've done is get us into massive debt, put our taxes up massively, and invented new ways to punish us by bringing more and more people into the country that we have to pay for. Brilliant.
Yeah, it is unbelievable. I know we talk about the small boats crisis every day, all day, every day. And you know what? I don't think that's too much.
No, I don't.
Everybody is talking about. It just beggars belief that the government can't see that none of what it's doing is going to make any difference. I don't understand which bit of them don't get it. One in, one out. Well, we've had 435 in, I think, in the last couple of days alone.
And none out.
One in, one out thing working. It feels like that. You remember that a few weeks ago, the French police did their sort of symbolic, look at us puncturing one rubber dinghy, and never did that again. That's what the one in, one out policy feels like. It feels like here's an announcement of a scheme which we all know, in brackets, really isn't going to work, so that you guys, you silly voters, can think we're doing something. No one's fooled by this.
No.
And, the outbreak of protests, peaceful protests up and down the country, is quite something to behold. These are, in many places, these were not enormous protests in terms of numbers, but they're the kinds of protests that should really, really unsettle any government, that should send the message to Downing Street that the country is absolutely on a knife edge about this now. I don't know how this evolves. I really fear that something bad will happen, because it's for the government to show leadership, to make people feel that they're being listened to, and simply saying, one in, one out, we're piloting the scheme, but we're not going to give you any details. We're not going to tell you how many people are going to be shifted out under this policy, because it might play into the hands of the people smugglers. Come on, give me strength. You're not telling us that, Home Secretary, because the numbers are infinitesimal. And we can already see from this weekend's figure that it's not a deterrent at all.
No, instead we get this kind of performative nonsense of Keir Starmer, trying to make out he's the hard man, putting out these videos and putting out messages to suggest that, we're not going to take it anymore. When I said I was going to lock people up, I meant it, and all this kind of absolute cobblers, quite frankly. I mean, have a look at this one. I don't know if you saw this last Friday. We played this. It's a short little kind of epithet of a migrant transit van, supposedly. This is meant to show that this government is cracking down on illegal migrants. Have a look. There's another sort of Kraftwerk theme there, isn't it, that they picked up on for the music. And you just think, what is the point of that? Is it meant to be frightening? That's it. That was the video they put out of 3 guys getting out of a minivan carrying their belongings in a blue plastic bag, which they'd obviously been given. And as somebody said to me, they're already being put into a place that was probably more comfortable than where they came from in Calais. So for them, this is hardly detention, is it?
Well, also they know, because word spreads pretty quickly, that statistically they're most likely to be released as soon as the cameras have disappeared.
Yeah, right.
Because of the way our pandering to so-called human rights works. If you're going to do this stuff, you have to really mean it. And the Greeks, I heard you talking about the Greek
in Crete,
success. They meant it. They dispatched their foreign minister, the leadership there, to send out a very, very clear message. And they weren't at all embarrassed about it. They just said, look, we're going to make this a really, really hostile place for you to rock up. And guess what? It actually worked. But unfortunately, our lot just don't seem to understand this. I don't think this is sustainable for another 6 months, actually, never mind 4 years. Something has got to happen. Something will happen. I don't know what it is. But I do think the government is going to be forced into a different approach.
They're going to have to do something drastic, I fear, because the sheer numbers are so overwhelming now. The front page of the Express has got a story saying that some reform councillors, particularly in Kent, are concerned because it looks as though now they're gearing up to actually buy up entire streets to put migrants in places like Folkestone, in places like Thanet, in parts of Kent, which are obviously quite close to Dover, because they are trying to get them out of hotels, but the alternative might actually be worse.
Well, again, this is just such stupidity. It's such absolute lunacy to think, oh, well, the migrant hotels have become a real focus for public discontent. So here's what we'll do. We'll put them in private housing and we'll bunch it all together along a street. People are not going to calm down about this or feel any less, quite rightfully indignant and frankly furious about it, because they've been moved out of hotels into private accommodation. And the reason is, I get that private accommodation doesn't look quite so ludicrously luxurious as some of the hotels we've shown on this station. But the truth and the real problem is that the British people are being pushed down the list by this policy for housing. And, I'm quite regularly getting emails from people who have been told, it's going to take you years to get any social housing. And people aren't stupid. They know why this is, because other communities, as it were, being prioritised. I've heard of a shocking case of an Afghan couple who speak no English whatsoever, which begs the question, if they've come here under the so-called Arab scheme, how could they possibly have been doing much to help the British government and the British armed forces if they can't speak a word of English? And they've been fast-tracked into much-needed social housing within a few weeks of their arrival here, while local people are being deprioritised. That, along with hundreds of pounds of universal credit going direct into their bank accounts, while their rent is paid for directly by the British taxpayer. This is just totally wrong. And on so many counts, people are beginning to feel, well, I think they've been feeling it for some time now, that it's all topsy-turvy. The government has got this all upside down.
Yeah.
They are protecting the rights of all the wrong people. You see that again with this ridiculous story. I mean, it'd be almost funny that shopkeepers who are trying desperately to do something, anything, to stop the rapid exit of their goods from their shops in the hands of shoplifters, are now being told, oh, you can't put pictures of this from CCTV in your shop window because of GDPR. I mean, what? I
know. Yeah, they're saying, it might be some kind of breach of data protection rules.
I mean, really couldn't give a flying monkey.
No. I know, it's
I do
incredible.
it anyway.
But it is, it's like everything's upside down. You know, it's like I was, you know, metaphor for Britain for me was yesterday I was driving back from Sussex and I passed 3 or 4 different points at which I noticed that they've installed a whole load of electric car charging points, you know, in all parts of different parts of South London. And guess what? Not one of them had a car on it. Not one. But don't worry, we'll take a load of space, we'll build these things, so no doubt probably either the local council's paying for it or the Department of Net Zero or something's paying for it, but nobody's using them because nobody wants them.
Just absolutely ridiculous. And then there's the Chagos Islands deal, which I really think that is such an important story of government cover-up and lies and the kind of thing that really sickens people. As we now know, and all of us, I think, long suspected, this deal is much dirtier and much more disadvantageous for the British people than the government wanted to admit. There is some hope out there, and that is that a future Reform government would rip up this deal, and they would do so pretty aggressively. They have said, you know, we will tell the Mauritian government, we will shut down your embassy, we will stop issuing visas and basically declare war on this deal. I'm not here to be a sort of walking, talking advert for reform, but hearing that this morning did cheer me up, I must say.
Yeah, absolutely right. It's good to hear somebody with a mind of their own, to be honest. Let's talk about Nicola Sturgeon for a minute, though, because you wrote a piece in the Telegraph at the weekend. We've got a couple of clips. She's got a new book out. And I used to know, I think you and I have spoken about her before. I used to know her quite well back in the early days of sort of the early 2000s, when she was Alex Salmond's deputy. Have a look at this is what she said about her husband Peter's arrest.
What was it like when you saw Peter being led away?
I don't really have a clear memory of that, because I think I'd gone upstairs to kind of get myself ready, and so I don't really...
But the idea of him being taken out of your family home
so
by the
I
police...
don't know, and I genuinely don't know whether the fact that I don't have a clear image of that in my head is because I didn't witness it, or that I have kind of somehow blocked it out. It wasn't until I got to my mum and dad's that I saw the pictures of my house looking like a murder scene, effectively.
It's a strange interview. We'll play another clip about her sexuality in a minute, but she's an odd woman, really, isn't she?
She is, and I sort of feel almost conflicted of just being negative about her, because I think, you know, she has done extraordinary things. I happen to think that they're pretty much all the wrong things, but she was a very sort of strong and impressive leader during the pandemic. And I don't mean that I'm at all impressed by the measures she took, but she certainly had Downing Street on the back foot a lot of time. And, you know, from my own reporting of the inside story of the pandemic, the extent to which Boris Johnson and his crew were kind of running in circles to avoid being outmaneuvered by Nicola Sturgeon, politically is sort of quite impressive. But she got such a strange figure, doesn't she? I mean, imagine, it is odd not being able to remember such a moment as your husband being arrested. But really what matters, and what I was writing about in the Telegraph at the weekend, is her legacy. I mean, she was just a total disaster and did dreadful, dreadful things in her time as First Minister of Scotland. I mean, Scotland got quite demonstrably worse in so many respects. You can look at the extent to which NHS waiting lists exploded, the extent to which, you know, the government of Scotland just pulled out of international education league tables because they were making Scotland look so bad. The rocketing drug deaths, you know, so many indices which just cast that SNP administration in a terrible light. I don't think it's the last we've heard of Nicola Sturgeon. You know, you and I know, because we spent many years, I grew up in Scotland, I almost consider it home, really, that Scotland is quite short of totemic figures, big celebrities. And I don't think she's going to totally disappear off the scene. She's obviously got other things she's planning.
I guess so. It all unravelled so quickly as well after that terrible interview she did with ITV, when she suddenly, you could almost see in real time her thought process going, oh God, I've just said it. I've just said the one thing that I shouldn't have said, that basically, you know, there are circumstances under which a trans woman is not a woman. And that was it, the end, over.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and then there's a whole fascinating dimension of her relationship with Alex Salmond,
Yeah.
and how that, you know, because she was sort of a protege
Yeah,
of his,
very
and
much.
then that all went absolutely sour. I just want to add one anecdote about Nicola Sturgeon. She's one of the first politicians that I, as a very young political reporter, had lunch with one-to-one. And in the Grand League table of the probably hundreds of ministers and, you know, senior figures that I've been privileged enough to have one-to-one time with over the years, she was the hardest work. I mean, she was right up there in my top 5 worst ever lunches with a politician. It was really hard going, to the point that I actually remember quite clearly where the restaurant was and just how much I was looking forward to just getting the bill and getting out there.
Right. There's a podcast in that, the 5 worst lunches you've ever had.
Yeah, Theresa May is another one.
Yeah, I bet. Have a look at this. This is her being asked about her sexuality.
You write in the book, I have never considered sexuality, mine own included, to be binary. What do you mean by that?
I mean, what it says, it's just my view of the world and life and the way people are. If you're about to ask me, am I making some big revelation? No. Am I putting labels on myself? No. That's how I see the world.
Might we see you in a relationship with a woman?
I'm just out of a marriage, so I'm not rushing into a relationship with anyone anytime soon. I'm enjoying being my own person for a while.
But not ruling it out?
I'm not contemplating, you know, sort of anything of that nature. I'm just enjoying life.
I'm starting to want to leave the room and I'm not even in it, you know?
Yeah.
Just kind of going, what?
Yeah, cringe. I mean, there had long been speculation about this, hadn't there? You
Right.
know?
And she hasn't done anything to stop that, really, has she?
Well, quite the reverse. I mean, she didn't rule anything out, and that's fine. That's all up to her. But it does cast a new light on her unbelievable championing of a woke and frankly pretty creepy LGBTQIA whatever blah agenda in the Scottish education system and also through the legal system. You know, she now here we have it. While she was married all that time, actually she saw her sexuality or sexuality in general as non-binary, which definitely gives us some insight into why she pushed that agenda so hard. Ultimately, it did for her.
Yeah, it really did. Fascinating stuff. Good to talk to you, Isabel Oakeshott. Thank you very much indeed. Talks International Editor